At around 4 in the morning on May 12, 2006, a security camera in Ipswich recorded a 19-year-old walking across Dog's Head Street. His name was Luke Durbin. He was heading in the direction of the bus station. He wasn't running, nobody appeared to be chasing him. Nothing in the image tells you that you're watching the final confirmed sighting of a person who will still be missing 20 years later. But after Luke crosses that road, the verified trail ends. No confirmed phone activity, no confirmed transaction, no confirmed CCTV sighting, no confirmed explanation of where he went next. And then, roughly 10 minutes later, another camera captured something else moving through the area, a Volvo. For years, it was one more vehicle investigators wanted to understand. Today, police attach far more significance to it. Not because the footage became clearer, because what investigators eventually learned about Luke changed what that car might mean. The obvious question is, where did Luke go after 4 in the morning? But that isn't the most disturbing question anymore. The deeper question is, who might have known exactly where he was? Before that CCTV image became evidence, Luke Durbin was simply a 19-year-old from Halsley in Suffolk. He was musical. Contemporary reporting described him as a talented musician who had studied music technology in Colchester before leaving the course. For a period, according to his mother Nikki, Luke had seemed directionless. Then, shortly before his disappearance, something improved. He found regular work at a greengrocer in Aldborough. His mother later remembered a noticeable change: more responsibility, more sociability, more of the son she recognized. He cooked, he spent time with his younger sister, Alicia. And importantly, although Luke could stay out with friends, his family described prolonged silence from him as deeply unusual. That matters because missing person cases often begin with ambiguity. Maybe someone wanted space, maybe they left deliberately, maybe they simply failed to tell anyone where they were going. Luke had actually left home once before. Years earlier, he'd gone to France. But according to his family, even then he told his sister what he was doing and remained in contact. This time was different, because when Luke disappeared, some of the things you would expect someone to take if they planned to leave were left behind. On Thursday, May 11th, Luke went to Woodbridge to meet friends. He rode his recently acquired motorbike to a friend's house and left it there. He also left his mobile phone and other personal belongings behind before going out into Ipswich. Suffolk Police still emphasize those details in their current account of the case. Think about what this means before going any further. Luke wasn't carrying the device that could easily connect him to his family. His motorbike, the simplest way of getting himself home, was sitting somewhere else. And later that night, those seemingly ordinary decisions would leave him stranded in central Ipswich. Luke and his friends went to Zest, a nightclub on Princess Street. At some point during the evening, they became separated. There is no evidence in that fact alone of anything sinister. People lose friends in clubs constantly. Someone goes to the bar, someone goes outside, someone assumes they'll meet again, and ordinarily that's exactly what happens. Except this time, Luke eventually came out alone. From there, the investigation becomes unusually visual, because cameras began following him, not continuously, but enough to reconstruct his attempt to get home. Police eventually traced Luke from the nightclub toward Ipswich railway station. That route tells us something very simple. Luke appears to have been trying to leave Ipswich, but trains were no longer a solution, so he tried another option. A taxi office called Hawk Express on Old Foundry Road. Contemporary reporting placed Luke there at roughly 3:40 in the morning. He tried to arrange transport. It didn't work. According to reporting from the months after his disappearance, Luke did not have the money necessary to simply pay for the journey home. The taxi office suggested another possibility: the bus station. And this is where the case becomes deceptively simple, because if you temporarily forget everything that came later, Luke's behavior makes sense. Nightclub, station, no train, taxi office, no taxi, bus station. Each step appears to be another attempt to solve the same boring problem. How do I get home? There is something important about that. We don't need to invent fear. We don't need to imagine Luke believing someone was following him. We don't need to place danger into the CCTV where there is no evidence for it. The unsettling part is that, as far as the confirmed timeline shows, Luke was doing something completely ordinary, trying to get home, and then he stops appearing. At approximately 4 in the morning, a camera captures Luke crossing Dog's Head Street toward the old cattle market bus station. This is the last confirmed sighting. That word matters, confirmed, because over the following hours, days, and years, other people would claim they had seen Luke. But a claimed sighting and a verified sighting are not the same thing. At 4 in the morning, police have him on camera. After that point, certainty collapses. Police later released additional CCTV images from the area. One showed someone who appeared to be walking a dog, another showed a cyclist around 4:16 a.m. Other images showed a person in a hooded coat near 4th Street at around 4:11, and there is a crucial warning here. When those images were re-released, police explicitly said the unidentified people were being treated as potential witnesses. They said there was nothing at that time indicating those people were involved in Luke's disappearance. That's important in a case like this. A blurry silhouette is seductive. The human brain wants to turn every unidentified figure into a suspect, but uncertainty is not evidence of guilt. What investigators needed were people who might have seen something, because somewhere between the final camera and whatever happened next, Luke disappeared from the verified record. And the most painful part is that at 4 in the morning, Luke's family didn't know they were already inside a missing person case. Friday passed. Luke sometimes stayed with friends. His mother initially believed he had gone to work. It was only when the normal explanation started disappearing that concern took over. Luke hadn't collected his motorbike. Friends didn't know where he was. Then his workplace confirmed he hadn't arrived. His mother began calling people, then hospitals, then police. Luke was formally reported missing on Saturday afternoon, May 13th. By then, more than a day had passed since that final confirmed image, and suddenly, all the mundane decisions from Thursday night became evidence. The phone left behind, the motorbike left behind, the unsuccessful journey home, the cameras, the crossing. Investigators began reconstructing the city. Police searched on foot. They used specialist resources including dogs and a helicopter. They reviewed large amounts of CCTV. They examined more than 100 people recorded in Luke's phone contacts and spoke with friends, relatives, and work colleagues. Early reporting said investigators worked through around 60 hours of CCTV before isolating Luke's trail. And that reconstruction gave them something valuable. They could show where Luke had been, but it couldn't tell them where he went next. Then came a report that, if confirmed, would have completely changed the timeline. Someone reported seeing Luke in Woodbridge the following day, not walking, inside a vehicle. Police say the reported sighting occurred sometime between approximately 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. on Saturday, May 13th. Luke was said to have been inside a dark blue Renault Megane, driven by another man, near the entrance to the Durbin Center car park on Quayside. If that was Luke, then the mystery wasn't what happened after 4 in the morning. It would mean Luke had survived the night. It would mean he had traveled from Ipswich back toward Woodbridge, and it would mean someone else may have been with him. But investigators never obtained the breakthrough necessary to turn that report into a confirmed continuation of the timeline. Police received other possible sightings as well. None resolved the case. So mentally, return to the last point we can actually stand on. Not the possible Megane, not a later rumor, not a theory. Dog's Head Street, approximately 4 in the morning. Because about 10 minutes after Luke was captured there, another vehicle entered the story. A silver or white Volvo was captured on CCTV driving in the area. Police have said the model may have been a Volvo 440. Years later, investigators were still trying to identify its driver. In 2015, police again released CCTV imagery of a Volvo seen in Orwell Place shortly after Luke disappeared from the confirmed timeline. Now stop here, because it is very easy to make a mistake. A car being near a missing person does not automatically make that car responsible for the disappearance. Cities contain cars. 4 in the morning is not empty, and coincidence is always possible. If this were all police had, the Volvo would be interesting, but not extraordinary. Except that isn't all they eventually learned. For years, the footage remained physically the same. Same vehicle, same streets, same few minutes. But investigators' understanding of Luke's life changed, and once it did, the Volvo stopped looking like simply a car that happened to pass through Ipswich, because police now say they believe that vehicle was connected to people involved in supplying drugs, which leads to the part of Luke's life that fundamentally changes how this case is understood. In their 20th anniversary appeal in May 2026, Suffolk Police made their current position unusually clear. Investigators say it is now understood that Luke had become involved in drug dealing linked to suppliers from Brixton in South London. Police describe those suppliers using a term that is familiar today: county lines. That language didn't have the same public meaning in 2006, but the basic model is simple. Drug supply networks operating from one area can extend distribution into another, using local contacts and creating relationships built around supply, money, pressure, and debt. And according to police, Luke had become connected to that world. Now think again about the Volvo, not as proof, as context. Police say they believe the vehicle seen about 10 minutes after Luke's final CCTV appearance was connected to people involved in supplying drugs, and police now describe one leading hypothesis. If Luke owed money to those suppliers, he may have been vulnerable to retaliation. He may have been abducted. And investigators say the presence of the Volvo near the location of Luke's last confirmed sighting adds weight to that possibility. Notice the wording, hypothesis, not conclusion. Police still say they retain an open mind. There is no public evidence establishing that Luke entered that Volvo. There is no public proof that the Volvo's occupants abducted him, and Luke has never been found. But 20 years after that camera recorded him walking toward a bus station, investigators are publicly connecting three things: Luke, drug suppliers, and a Volvo appearing approximately 10 minutes later. The footage didn't change, its meaning did. So reconstruct Luke's night again, this time knowing what police know now. Luke leaves his phone and motorbike in Woodbridge. He travels into Ipswich. He becomes separated from friends. He leaves the nightclub alone. He tries the railway station, no route home. He reaches the taxi office, still no route home. He begins walking toward the bus station. At around 4, the camera records him crossing Dogshead Street. Then confirmed sightings stop. Approximately 10 minutes later, the Volvo appears, and police now believe that vehicle was associated with people involved in the drug supply world to which Luke had become connected. Nothing about that sequence proves what happened, but it changes the probabilities investigators are considering, and it creates a very specific question. Did Luke simply encounter the wrong people by chance? Or did somebody know that a 19-year-old with no phone, no vehicle, and no easy way home was alone in Ipswich at 4 in the morning? We do not know, and any documentary that tells you otherwise is moving beyond the evidence. But police clearly believe the possibility of organized criminal involvement deserves serious attention, and 6 years after Luke disappeared, that belief was strong enough for the investigation to take another dramatic turn. In June 2012, police arrested 2 men in connection with the suspected murder of Luke Durbin. One was arrested on suspicion of murder, another on suspicion of being concerned in his murder. Police searched properties as part of the investigation. For Luke's family, it must have looked like the case was finally moving toward an answer. But an arrest is not a conviction. It isn't even proof that a crime can ultimately be established against the person arrested. Both men were eventually released without charge. Current Suffolk Police material is explicit about that. And so the case returned to the same unbearable condition. A great deal of investigation, a great deal of information, and no Luke, no body, no confirmed destination after the CCTV, no publicly established explanation for exactly what happened. Which means the responsible way to look at this case is not to select the most dramatic theory and call it the truth. It is to separate what we know from what we think the evidence may mean. Here is the case stripped of speculation. Confirmed. Luke Durbin was 19. He went out with friends in Ipswich on May 11th, 2006. He left his phone, motorbike, and other belongings at a friend's house in Woodbridge. He became separated from his friends during the night. Police reconstructed his route from Zest nightclub through the railway station to the Hawk Express taxi office and back toward the bus station. At around 4 in the morning on May 12th, CCTV captured Luke crossing Dogshead Street. That is his last confirmed sighting. Also confirmed by police, roughly 10 minutes later, a Volvo, possibly a 440, was filmed driving in the area. Investigators now believe that vehicle was connected to people involved in supplying drugs, and police now say Luke had become involved in drug dealing linked to suppliers from Brixton. Reported but not confirmed as a continuation of his movements, a possible sighting of Luke the next day in Woodbridge, inside a dark blue Renault Megane. Other claimed sightings also produced no breakthrough. Hypothesis. Police say organized criminals may have been involved. They have specifically raised the possibility that if Luke owed money, his disappearance could have been retaliation, potentially involving abduction. But police continue to keep an open mind. That distinction matters, because the strongest mystery here isn't created by pretending we know more. It's created by recognizing how much evidence exists and how small the missing piece may actually be. In May 2026, 20 years after Luke disappeared, the officer leading the current review made another striking statement. Andy Guy from the joint Norfolk and Suffolk Major Crime Review and Unsolved Case team said he is convinced there are people locally who know what happened to Luke. He also said he believes some people previously spoken to by police have not fully disclosed everything they know about Luke and the events of May 2006. That creates a very different kind of mystery, because perhaps the problem isn't that the answer disappeared 20 years ago. Perhaps parts of the answer have survived perfectly well, inside someone's memory, inside an old relationship, inside a conversation that never reached police. Investigators specifically noted that allegiances change, fear changes, relationships change. 20 years is enough time for the reason someone stayed silent in 2006 to no longer exist in 2026. And through all of that time, Luke's mother Nikki has continued asking the same basic question. Not for a theory, not for another possible sighting, for an answer. Look at the final confirmed image one more time. A 19-year-old crossing a road. If you saw it without context, there would be nothing remarkable about it. That's what makes it difficult to forget, because somewhere after this frame, something changes. Maybe within minutes, maybe later, we don't know. But approximately 10 minutes after Luke is recorded here, a car appears. 20 years later, police believe that car was connected to people supplying drugs. They believe Luke had become connected to that same world, and they believe there are still people who know more than they have said. The camera gave investigators almost everything you would expect a camera to give them. A place, a direction, a time, a final image. What it couldn't record was what happened next. Luke Durbin has been missing since May 12, 2006. The investigation remains open.